Emma Miller, 29, never thought her sister's harmless prank would leave her fighting for her life on the hospital floor. But as she lay there, heart monitor screaming, watching her parents beg her sister to stop filming and call 911, Emma realized the truth. Her family would rather preserve their picture-perfect image than save her life. That day changed everything, and not just because of the cardiac arrest. What happened next would tear apart a family secret 20 years in the making. Hey everyone! Before I dive deeper into this nightmare, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. This family betrayal story still shakes me to my core, and if you've ever experienced that moment when you realize blood doesn't always mean loyalty, hit that like button. Subscribe if you want more stories about the karma that eventually comes for those who hurt the people they are supposed to protect. Now, let's continue with how my perfectly normal family dinner turned into the beginning of the end. Growing up in suburban Boston, the Millers were what everyone called the ideal American family. My father, Richard, was a respected cardiologist at Massachusetts General Hospital, known for his groundbreaking research on congenital heart conditions. My mother, Diana, served as the chairwoman for several prominent charity organizations in New England, always impeccably dressed and ready with the perfect smile for society photographs. And then there was my younger sister, Olivia, the golden child, the perfect daughter who could do no wrong. And me? I was Emma, the oldest daughter with the unfortunate condition, as my mother would delicately phrase it during her charity galas. I was born with a rare heart defect that required multiple surgeries throughout my childhood. While other kids played sports and attended sleepovers, I spent significant portions of my youth in hospital rooms, with my father consulting with his colleagues about my treatment. It wasn't the childhood I would have chosen, but my condition had stabilized in adulthood with careful management and medication. Despite my health challenges, I had built a good life for myself. After completing my master's in library science, I secured a position at the Boston Public Library in their rare manuscripts division. I had my own apartment in Cambridge, a small circle of close friends, and even a blossoming relationship with Michael, a kind-hearted professor of literature I'd met during a university lecture series. My heart condition required daily medication and regular checkups, but it hadn't prevented me from living independently. Our family dinners every Sunday remained a sacred tradition, even as Olivia and I moved into adulthood. My parents insisted on maintaining the appearance of familial closeness, regardless of the underlying tensions. As I drove to my parents' Beacon Hill brownstone that fateful Sunday in October, I had no idea that the carefully constructed facade of our family was about to shatter completely. The dinner began like any other. My mother had prepared her signature roast, my father was discussing his latest research, and Olivia was sharing animated stories about her budding career in social media marketing. At 26, my sister had already amassed a significant following online, positioning herself as a lifestyle influencer with a carefully curated feed showcasing her seemingly perfect life. "Emma, darling, you're looking a bit pale," my mother remarked, eyeing me critically across the dining table. "Are you taking your medication properly?" Before I could respond, Olivia chimed in with a laugh. "Maybe she's just naturally that color, Mom. Not everyone can have my perfect complexion." I ignored the jab, used to my sister's subtle digs after years of practice. "I'm fine. Just tired from organizing the new exhibition at work." My father frowned, instantly shifting into doctor mode. "Any palpitations? Shortness of breath?" "Dad, I'm fine," I insisted, reaching for my water glass. "I've been taking my medication exactly as prescribed." "Speaking of your medication," Olivia said with a strange gleam in her eyes, "I noticed you took it right before dinner. Did it taste different today?" There was something in her tone that made me freeze mid-sip. "What do you mean?" Olivia glanced at her phone, which she had propped against the centerpiece, its camera suspiciously facing in my direction. "Oh, nothing really. Just curious if you noticed anything unusual." My stomach dropped as realization dawned. Olivia, what did you do? My sister's smile widened as she reached for her phone. It's for a prank video series I'm starting. Pranking my sick sister, my followers will love it. Don't worry, I just switched your heart medication with some vitamins. It's harmless. The room seemed to tilt as panic surged through me. You did what? My voice cracked as I gripped the edge of the table. Olivia, that medication regulates my heart rhythm. It's not a joke. My father's face drained of color. Olivia, tell me you didn't actually do this. Instead of showing remorse, my sister rolled her eyes dramatically. God, you're all so sensitive. It's just one dose, and I was going to tell you before you left. The comments and views will be worth it. My mother looked more concerned about the disruption to dinner than my health. Olivia, darling, perhaps this wasn't your best idea. Emma, calm down. Your anxiety will only make things worse. But calming down wasn't an option, as my heart began racing irregularly in my chest. The familiar sensation of arrhythmia, one I hadn't experienced in years thanks to my carefully managed medication regimen, sent waves of fear through my body. I struggled to stand, knocking over my water glass in the process. Dad, I gasped, clutching my chest. Something's wrong. As a cardiologist, my father recognized the signs immediately. He rushed to my side, guiding me to lie down on the dining room floor, as my mother hovered anxiously. Diana, get her emergency medication from her purse, he barked. Olivia, call 911 now. But Olivia wasn't calling for help. Instead, she had repositioned herself to get a better angle with her phone camera, recording my distress with an expression that mixed fascination with the anticipation of social media engagement. This is going to get so many views, she murmured, adjusting the frame. The authenticity is amazing. Olivia, my father roared. Put down the damn phone and call an ambulance. As darkness crept into the edges of my vision, I watched my mother's reaction, not rushing to help me or call for emergency services, but moving to stand between Olivia's camera and me. Olivia, stop recording immediately, she hissed. Do you have any idea what a video like this could do to our family's reputation? Your father's practice. Your future prospects. Their priorities became crystal clear in that moment of crisis. My health, my very life, was secondary to their image, their reputations, their perfect family facade. As my consciousness began to fade, the last thing I heard was my mother's urgent whisper to my father. Richard, we can handle this privately. Think of the scandal. The world went black after that. I later learned that my father had managed to stabilize me with my emergency medication before the paramedics arrived. But something far more profound than my heart had been damaged that evening. My trust in the family I thought would always protect me had been shattered beyond repair. I woke up to the rhythmic beeping of a cardiac monitor and the sterile smell of hospital antiseptic. For someone with my medical history, these sensations were unfortunately familiar. What wasn't familiar was waking up alone. During my previous hospitalizations, my family had always been there, my father conferring with doctors, my mother arranging flowers and fussing over my appearance, even Olivia occasionally showing up with magazines and gossip. This time, the chair beside my bed was empty. The digital clock on the wall showed it was just past 9 a.m., and sunlight streamed through the partially closed blinds of my private room at Massachusetts General Hospital. Dr. Eleanor Chen, my cardiologist since I'd transitioned from pediatric care, entered with a tablet in hand and concern etched across her features. Emma, you're awake. How are you feeling? She approached, checking my vitals with practiced efficiency. Like I've been hit by a truck, I admitted, my voice raspy. But I've felt worse after some of my surgeries. Dr. Chen nodded, pulling up a chair. You experienced a severe cardiac arrhythmia caused by the sudden discontinuation of your medication. Your father's quick intervention prevented a potentially fatal outcome. She paused, studying me with unusual intensity. Emma, can you tell me exactly what happened with your medication? The memory flooded back, Olivia's smirk, her phone recording my parents' reactions. My sister switched my heart medication with vitamins as a prank for her social media. She thought it would be funny. Dr. Chen's expression hardened, something I'd never seen on her typically composed face. That's not just dangerous, Emma. It's criminal. Tampering with prescription medication is a felony. I know. I looked away, the betrayal still raw. But they are my family. Which makes it worse, not better. Dr. Chen placed her hand gently on mine. Emma, there's something else we need to discuss. When you were admitted, we ran comprehensive blood panels as standard procedure for cardiac events. Something in her tone made me uneasy. And? Your blood type? She paused. It's not consistent with what's in your medical records from childhood. I blinked, confused. That's impossible. My father has personally overseen my medical care my entire life. That's why I ran the test again to confirm. She looked directly at me. Emma, according to your current blood work, you cannot be biologically related to both of your parents. The genetic markers simply don't align. The room seemed to spin again, but for entirely different reasons. What are you saying? I'm saying that either there was a major error in your childhood medical records, which is highly unlikely given the multiple surgeries and blood transfusions you've received, or I'm not who I think I am, I finished, the implications crashing over me like a wave. Dr. Chen nodded solemnly. I wouldn't have brought this to your attention if it weren't medically relevant. But given your cardiac condition and its potential genetic components, the accuracy of your family medical history is crucial. As this bombshell settled over me, there was a commotion at the door. My parents burst in, both looking harried but impeccably dressed as always. My father immediately reached for my chart while my mother rushed to my side, taking my hand with more emotion than she typically displayed. Emma, darling, we've been so worried. Her voice was pitched just right, concerned but controlled. Perfect for anyone who might be listening. We would have been here when you woke, but we were dealing with Olivia. She's absolutely devastated about what happened. I extracted my hand from hers, the new information from Dr. Chen creating a barrier between us that felt insurmountable. Where is she? We've sent her to stay with your aunt in Vermont for a while, my father replied, still scanning my chart with a furrowed brow. She needs time to reflect on her actions away from social media. Translation: they had hidden her away until the scandal blew over. Dr. Chen cleared her throat, her presence forcing my parents to acknowledge her. Dr. Miller, Mrs. Miller, I was just discussing some anomalies in Emma's medical history. My father's head snapped up, an expression I couldn't quite identify flashing across his face before being replaced with professional concern. What anomalies? Discrepancies in her blood type and genetic markers compared to her childhood records, Dr. Chen stated matter-of-factly. Given Emma's condition, I believe it warrants further investigation. A heavy silence fell over the room. My mother's perfectly manicured nails dug into the strap of her designer handbag, while my father's expression became completely unreadable. That's impossible, he finally said. I supervised most of her early treatments myself. Which makes the discrepancy all the more concerning, Dr. Chen replied evenly. I've ordered additional genetic testing to confirm. My father's authority filled his voice. That won't be necessary. There must be an error in the current labs. Dad, I interrupted, my voice stronger than I expected. Why are you fighting this? If it's just a lab error, the additional testing will confirm that. My mother stepped in, her social graces taking over, as they always did in uncomfortable situations. Emma, You've just been through a traumatic event. Now isn't the time to make important medical decisions. Let's focus on getting you home first. But Dr. Chen stood her ground. As Emma's physician of record, I've already ordered the tests. They'll be conducted this afternoon. She turned to me. Unless you object, Emma? All three of them looked at me, Dr. Chen with professional concern, my mother with barely concealed panic, and my father with a coldness I'd never seen directed at me before. I want the tests, I said firmly. I need to know the truth. My father's jaw tightened. Diana, we need to discuss this privately. Dr. Chen, a word outside, please. As they left the room, my mother lingered behind for a moment. Her perfect composure slipped just enough for me to see genuine fear in her eyes. Emma, she whispered urgently, some things from the past are better left buried. For everyone's sake. Before I could respond, she hurried after my father, leaving me alone with questions multiplying by the second. What had Dr. Chen's discovery unearthed? What secrets were my parents hiding? And most disturbingly, if I wasn't biologically their daughter, who was I? The genetic test results arrived with devastating clarity 2 days later. Dr. Chen delivered the news personally, her compassion evident, but her professional ethics unwavering. The results confirm what we suspected, Emma. You are not biologically related to either Richard or Diana Miller. She handed me the report with genetic markers highlighted in yellow. There is zero genetic compatibility. Though I've been preparing myself for this possibility since our initial conversation, hearing the confirmation felt like having the ground torn from beneath me. 29 years of identity, gone in a single sentence. How is this possible? I whispered, staring at the clinical papers that had rewritten my entire existence. My birth certificate lists them as my parents. I have baby pictures, family albums. Dr. Chen sat beside me, her voice gentle. There are several possibilities. Adoption is the most obvious, though typically that would be documented in medical records. My father had access to all my medical records, I pointed out. He could have ensured certain information was never included. She nodded grimly. Given his position at this hospital over the decades, that's unfortunately possible. A more disturbing thought surfaced. What about my heart condition? I was always told it was congenital, possibly with a genetic component. My father specialized in this exact type of cardiac research. Dr. Chen's expression became troubled. That's another concerning aspect. Based on your most recent comprehensive cardiac evaluations, your condition doesn't match what's described in your early childhood records. The type of arrhythmia you experience is consistent with damage from a childhood viral infection, not a congenital defect. The implications were staggering. Are you saying my condition was misdiagnosed? Or deliberately mislabeled? I can't speculate on intent, she replied cautiously. But the discrepancy is significant enough that it cannot be attributed to simple error, or the evolution of medical terminology over time. I pressed my fingers to my temples, trying to process everything. So I'm not their biological daughter, my heart condition isn't what I've been told my entire life, and my medication regimen might have been. I couldn't even finish the thought. Your current medication regimen is appropriate for your actual condition, Dr. Chen assured me. But it's possible it was more aggressive than necessary in the past. My mind raced through childhood memories, countless hospital stays, experimental treatments that my father insisted were necessary, being kept home from school and activities because I was too fragile. Had my entire childhood of medical intervention been based on a fabrication? A knock at the door interrupted our conversation. My parents entered, both looking like they'd aged years in days. My mother's usually perfect makeup couldn't hide her reddened eyes, while my father's authoritative posture had given way to a slight stoop. Dr. Chen stood. I'll give you some privacy. Emma, We'll talk more later about adjustments to your care plan. After she left, silence engulfed the room. For once, my eloquent mother seemed at a loss for words. It was my father who finally spoke, his voice barely recognizable. You've received the test results. It wasn't a question. Yes. I held up the papers. Care to explain how I'm not biologically related to either of you, yet you've presented me as your daughter for 29 years? My mother sank into the chair Dr. Chen had vacated, tears spilling down her cheeks. Emma, please understand, everything we did out of love. Love? I repeated incredulously. You built my entire life on lies. My identity, my health, my voice broke. Who am I, really? My father moved to the window, staring out at the Boston skyline. Your name is Emma Catherine Miller. That has never been a lie. But everything else has been. I felt anger rising, cutting through the shock. Where did I come from? Who are my real parents? My mother reached for my hand, which I pulled away. We are your real parents, she insisted. Biology isn't everything, Emma. Then tell me the truth, I demanded. All of it. Now? My parents exchanged a look laden with decades of shared secrets. My father sighed deeply, finally turning to face me. It was 1996, he began. I was chief resident, working on a research study on pediatric cardiac anomalies. A young woman came in, homeless, addicted to heroin, and in labor. The delivery was complicated. She died shortly after giving birth to you. I felt the blood drain from my face. And the father? Unknown, my mother interjected. She couldn't or wouldn't provide that information. My father continued, his clinical detachment clearly a defense mechanism. You were severely underweight and showed signs of distress. Preliminary examinations suggested potential cardiac issues, likely due to poor prenatal care and the mother's substance abuse. We had been trying to have a child for years, my mother added, her voice dropping to a whisper. Multiple miscarriages, failed fertility treatments. When Richard came home and told me about this perfect baby girl, who had no one in the world. The pieces were starting to fit together in a horrifying puzzle. So you just took me. It wasn't that simple, my father insisted. The hospital was overwhelmed. Records were still largely paper-based. I was respected, trusted. Arranging for a private adoption, with minimal documentation, was possible then in ways it wouldn't be now. That's not an adoption, I said coldly. That's kidnapping. My mother flinched. Emma, please. We gave you everything, the best medical care, education, opportunities. Did I even need all that best medical care? I cut in. Dr. Chen says my condition is consistent with a viral infection, not a congenital defect. Did you know that? A flash of something, guilt, crossed my father's face before he composed himself. Early diagnosis of cardiac conditions wasn't as sophisticated then. I did what I thought was best based on the symptoms you presented. But there was something in his evasion that didn't ring true. A terrible suspicion began forming. Did you deliberately misdiagnose me? Keep me dependent on treatments and medications I didn't need? Of course not. My mother exclaimed. How could you think that? Yet my father remained silent too long before responding. The human heart is complex, Emma. Diagnoses evolve. Treatments change. That's not an answer, I pressed. Did you use me as a research subject? Is that why you took me? Because I was a parentless baby with a heart condition that fit your research interests. The look that passed between my parents confirmed my worst fears before either could deny it. You were never in any danger, my father finally said. The treatments were appropriate for what we understood of your condition at the time. And keeping me isolated, dependent, constantly monitoring my condition, was that also appropriate? Tears of anger burned my eyes. Did Olivia know? Is she even your biological child? Yes, my mother answered quickly. Olivia was born 3 years after you came to us. A miracle pregnancy after we'd stopped trying. The golden child. The real daughter. Everything suddenly made terrible sense. Olivia's privileged position in the family, my parents' willingness to excuse her increasingly narcissistic behavior, the underlying current of difference I'd always felt but could never name. I want you both to leave, I said, my voice shaking with suppressed rage. Now? Emma, my mother pleaded. We are still your parents. We still love you. Love doesn't do what you did to me, I replied. And you're not my parents. You're the people who stole my life. 3 weeks after being discharged from the hospital, I stood outside my parents' brownstone on Beacon Hill, key in hand, but hesitant to enter what had once been my childhood home. Dr. Chen had adjusted my medication to a simpler regimen, confirming that much of what I'd been prescribed over the years had been unnecessarily aggressive. I was physically stronger than I'd been in years, but emotionally, I was still reeling. With Michael's encouragement, I'd hired a private investigator specializing in adoption and birth parent searches. The preliminary results had come in yesterday. My biological mother's name was Catherine Winters, just 19, when she died giving birth to me. The trail to my biological father was colder, but there were promising leads based on Catherine's known associates at the time. I hadn't told my parents. It felt strange even thinking of them in those terms now, about my investigation. Today's visit had a different purpose. Today, I would confront Olivia. My sister had returned from her convenient exile in Vermont a week ago, her social media accounts suspiciously quiet except for vague posts about personal growth and family healing. According to my mother's carefully worded texts, Olivia was truly remorseful and desperate to make amends. I didn't believe it for a second. Using my key for what I decided would be the last time, I entered the house silently. Voices drifted from the kitchen, my mother and Olivia, their conversation stopping abruptly at the sound of the door closing behind me. Emma? My mother appeared in the hallway, uncertainty in her expression. We weren't expecting you until dinner time. Plans changed, I replied flatly. Is Olivia here? As if summoned, my sister appeared behind our mother, looking uncharacteristically subdued in simple jeans and a sweater rather than her usual carefully styled outfits. Emma, she said, her voice small. I'm so sorry about what happened. I never meant. Let's talk privately, I cut her off, nodding toward the study. Now? My mother wrung her hands. I'll make some tea. Richard will be home in an hour. I ignored her, following Olivia into my father's study and closing the door firmly behind us. The room was unchanged, dark wood, leather-bound medical texts, the faint smell of my father's cologne. How many decisions about my life, my health, my fabricated identity had been made within these walls? Olivia perched on the edge of a leather armchair, looking everywhere but at me. Mom and Dad told me everything, she began. About you not being, biologically related to you. I finished. Yes, that's become painfully clear. She flinched at my tone. I had no idea, Emma. You have to believe me. Do I? I remained standing, unwilling to settle into the familiar comfort of this house of lies. Because right now, I don't know what to believe about anything or anyone in this family. I was 3 when they brought you home, she said. I grew up thinking you were my sister, just like they said. It wasn't until I was a teenager that I overheard them arguing about your situation, but even then, I thought they meant your heart condition. I studied her face, searching for signs of deception. Olivia had always been a convincing actress when it suited her purposes. And the medication switch. The video, Explain that, Olivia. At least she had the grace to look genuinely ashamed. It was stupid and cruel. I was jealous, okay? You've always been their focus, every family conversation, every decision, everything revolved around Emma's health, Emma's needs, Emma's limitations. You were jealous of my heart condition. I asked incredulously. Of spending my childhood in hospital rooms instead of at school dances. Of being told I might not live to adulthood. I was jealous of their attention, she shot back, a glimpse of her true self breaking through the remorseful facade. Do you have any idea what it's like to grow up with a sister who gets all the concern, all the care, while you're expected to be perfect and self-sufficient because there's no energy left for you? I laughed bitterly. That's rich coming from the golden child. I watched you get everything I couldn't have, freedom, friends, a normal life, while being told I should be grateful for the elaborate cage they built around me. It wasn't like that, she insisted. Wasn't it? Then why did you film me having a cardiac event instead of calling for help? Why did you seem more concerned with your social media views than whether I lived or died? She looked away, unable to meet my eyes. I didn't think it would be that serious. I thought you'd just feel weird for a bit, and I'd tell you before you left. It was supposed to be a stupid prank video, not what happened. But when it did happen, when I was collapsing, when Dad was yelling for you to call 911, you kept filming. The memory of her face behind the phone camera still made my blood run cold. What kind of person does that, Olivia? Tears spilled down her cheeks, but I couldn't tell if they were from genuine remorse or self-pity. I don't know. I don't know what's wrong with me. Mom and Dad have had me talking to a therapist in Vermont. They think I might have narcissistic tendencies or something. You don't say, I remarked dryly. I'm trying to be better, she pleaded. I deleted all my social accounts. I'm taking a leave from work. I want to make things right between us. I studied my sister, not by blood, but the person I'd grown up with nonetheless. There's something I need to know, Olivia. The truth, for once. Did you know your prank could hurt me? Did any part of you want that to happen? Her hesitation told me everything before she even spoke. Sometimes I resented how fragile you were. How everything had to revolve around protecting Emma. I wanted to show them that maybe you weren't as sick as everyone thought. She looked up, tears streaming now. But I never wanted you to almost die, Emma. You have to believe that. An uncomfortable silence fell between us as I absorbed her confession. Outside the study door, I could hear my mother hovering, pretending to dust or straighten pictures, desperate to eavesdrop on our conversation. I found my birth mother's name, I said finally. She died the day I was born. My father is still unknown, but I'm going to find out everything I can about my real history. Olivia's eyes widened. Does Dad know? No. And he won't, not from you. I fixed her with a hard stare. I am giving you one chance, Olivia. One chance to do the right thing for once. What do you mean? I pulled out my phone and placed it on the desk between us. I want the video. The original and any copies. Everything you recorded that night. She paled. I deleted it after everything happened. We both know that's not true, I said evenly. You wouldn't destroy potential content, especially something that dramatic. You would have saved it, even if you decided not to post it. Her silence confirmed my suspicion. Here's what's going to happen, I continued. You're going to send me that video right now. Then you're going to tell me anything else you know about my history with this family that I might not know yet. And if I don't? A flash of the old Olivia, calculating, self-interested, surfaced briefly. Then I go to the police with what I know about my origins. I'm sure the statute of limitations hasn't run out on kidnapping. And tampering with prescription medication is a felony, as I've recently learned. I leaned forward. Your perfect life, Mom and Dad's sterling reputations, all of it gone. Is that what you want? Hey everyone, I hope you're still with me on this wild journey. Can you believe what happened next? If you're feeling the tension in this family showdown, hit that like button and let me know in the comments if you've ever had to confront a family member who betrayed your trust. This is where things really started to escalate, and I'm so grateful to be able to share this story with all of you who have supported this channel. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss the incredible twist that's coming up next. Now, let's continue with what Olivia decided to do. Olivia stared at me for a long moment, a complex mix of emotions playing across her face. Finally, she reached for her phone. You've changed, she said, not looking up as she navigated through her files. Nearly dying because of your prank will do that, I replied. Finding out your entire life is a lie tends to have an impact too. I don't mean just since that incident. She glanced up briefly. You've always been the cautious one, the one who followed rules and avoided conflict. Now you're here threatening to have our parents arrested. They're not my parents, I corrected her automatically. And they committed crimes, Olivia. Serious ones. Against me, and probably against my biological mother's family, whoever they might be. She found what she was looking for and hesitated, her finger hovering over the screen. If I give you this, what are you going to do with it? That depends on what else I learn, I said honestly. Right now, it's insurance. Protection. With visible reluctance, she pressed send. My phone chimed with the incoming file. I checked to make sure it was complete. 7 minutes and 38 seconds of video from that night, beginning with Olivia setting up her phone at the dinner table and ending with paramedics wheeling me out on a stretcher. Is this the only copy? I asked. Yes. When I raised an eyebrow skeptically, she added, I swear, Emma. After what happened, even I'm not that heartless. I nodded, slipping my phone back into my pocket. Now tell me what else you know. Olivia sighed, running her hands through her hair, a nervous gesture I'd seen countless times throughout our childhood. I don't know much. Like I said, I overheard arguments sometimes. Mom blaming Dad for putting them at risk with his experiment. What experiment? I pressed. I don't know exactly. Something about your treatment, I think. Once I heard her say that if anyone ever found out what he'd done, they'd both go to prison and I'd be left alone. She looked genuinely troubled by the memory. I was maybe 14. I convinced myself she was being dramatic. The study door opened then, my mother entering with a tea tray she clearly had no intention of bringing earlier. Her practiced smile faltered when she saw our expressions. Girls? Everything okay in here? We were just discussing Dad's experimental treatments, I said bluntly, watching her face. The teacup she was holding clattered against its saucer. I'm not sure what you mean, Emma. Your father always provided you with the very best care. Stop lying, Mom, Olivia interrupted, surprising both of us. Haven't there been enough lies? Emma knows everything. My mother's facade cracked completely. She set down the tea tray with trembling hands and sank into the nearest chair. You don't understand. Either of you. The circumstances, the opportunities. Opportunities? I repeated, disgust rising in my throat. Is that what I was to you and Dad? An opportunity. For groundbreaking research, she whispered, as if saying it quietly would somehow make it less horrific. Richard was brilliant, but he needed data, case studies. The ethics committees were so restrictive, the approval process for new treatments so slow. When you came along, this abandoned infant with cardiac issues and no family to interfere. So he deliberately misdiagnosed me, I said, the confirmation of my suspicions like a physical blow. Subjected me to unnecessary treatments and medications to support his research. She didn't deny it. The treatments were helping other children. Real children with severe conditions. Your discomfort was saving lives, Emma. My discomfort? I echoed in disbelief. Is that what you call years of invasive procedures? Medications with side effects that made me too weak to attend school regularly. Telling me I might not survive to adulthood. It wasn't supposed to go on for so long, she admitted, dabbing at her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief. Initially, it was just monitoring, documenting how your body responded to various treatments. The papers Richard published were groundbreaking. His career soared. At my expense, I said coldly. You sacrificed my childhood, my health, and my identity for his career advancement. We gave you everything else, she insisted. The best schools, clothes, opportunities. Accept the truth, Olivia cut in unexpectedly. Her eyes were wide, as if she was finally processing the full implications of what our parents had done. Mom, how could you and Dad do this? She wasn't just some lab rat. Our mother stiffened at Olivia's betrayal. You don't understand the pressure we were under. Richard was brilliant, but unrecognized. We had financial concerns. Your future, Olivia. Don't you dare put this on me, Olivia said, recoiling. Don't make me part of this. I watched this exchange with a strange detachment, seeing clearly for the first time the dysfunctional dynamics that had shaped our family. My mother had enabled my father's ethical violations. Olivia had been raised to believe her needs and desires superseded all others. And I had been the unwitting subject in a decades-long experiment. I have the video, I told my mother, whose face drained of color. And I know enough now to start asking the right questions at the hospital, to the right people. What do you want? She asked, her voice barely audible. It was the first time in my life I'd ever held any power in this family, and the realization was both disturbing and exhilarating. I want my complete, unaltered medical records, I began. I want financial compensation for what was done to me, enough to secure my future, and cover the therapy I'll need to process all this. And I want Dad to personally explain to me exactly what he did and why. No clinical detachment, no medical justifications. The truth. My mother nodded numbly. If I get those things, I continued, I won't go public or to the authorities with what I know. Your reputations and freedom will remain intact. But if you fight me on this, I'll make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of people you really are. As the words left my mouth, I heard the front door open and close. My father had arrived home. The moment of reckoning was at hand. My father entered his study to find the three of us in what must have appeared to be an intervention. His confident stride faltered as he assessed our expressions, his medical training kicking in as he automatically catalogued the signs of distress. What's happening here? He asked, setting down his briefcase and removing his coat with practiced precision. Emma knows everything, my mother said, her voice hollow. About her origins. About your research. I expected him to deny it, to launch into a practiced explanation or indignant defense. Instead, he simply closed his eyes briefly and nodded, as if he had been waiting for this day to arrive. I see. He took a seat behind his desk, assuming the position of authority that had defined our relationship for decades. And I assume you have questions. Not questions, Dad, I replied, the title feeling foreign on my tongue now. Demands. A flicker of surprise crossed his face. He had always known me as compliant, trusting, the perfect patient. Go on. I repeated what I had told my mother, the medical records, financial compensation, and his complete honesty about what he had done. He listened without interruption, his expression unreadable. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair. The medical records are no problem. The financial arrangement can be negotiated. He paused. But before I give you the full explanation you're demanding, I want to know what you intend to do with this information. That depends on what you tell me, I answered honestly. And whether I believe you are finally telling the truth. He studied me with new eyes, as if seeing me as an adult, an equal, for the first time. Very well. He turned to my mother and Olivia. This conversation should be between Emma and me. My mother started to protest, but my father silenced her with a gesture. Diana, please. I need to speak with Emma alone. After they reluctantly left, closing the door behind them, my father opened a drawer and removed a small key. He unlocked the bottom drawer of his filing cabinet and extracted a worn leather journal. This contains everything, he said, placing it on the desk between us. My observations, research notes, and personal reflections from the day we brought you home until your 18th birthday. I stared at the journal, simultaneously eager to read its contents and afraid of what I would discover. Why did you do it? The truth, not the justifications you've told yourself all these years. He sighed deeply, suddenly looking every bit his 65 years. The truth is rarely simple, Emma. When Catherine Winters came into the ER that night, I was a researcher frustrated by bureaucratic obstacles to my work on pediatric cardiac treatments. I had theories that could save children's lives, but no way to test them without years of approvals and limitations. So when a homeless, addicted pregnant woman with no family connections delivered a baby with cardiac issues, you saw an opportunity, I finished for him. He nodded. It sounds monstrous when stated so plainly. Perhaps it was. But in that moment, I saw a chance to advance medicine and save a child who would otherwise likely end up in an overburdened system, possibly without the specialized care her condition required. Except my condition wasn't what you claimed it was, I pointed out. Dr. Chen confirmed that. My father's expression tightened. Your initial symptoms mimicked a congenital defect. The viral inflammation wasn't apparent until later, and by then, I was your perfect research subject, I finished. And changing the diagnosis would have raised questions. Yes, he admitted. I convinced myself that the treatments I was testing would benefit you regardless of the exact nature of your condition. Some did. Others. He trailed off. Others were unnecessary experiments that left me physically weakened, socially isolated, and emotionally dependent, I said flatly. He didn't deny it. Science often advances on the backs of subjects who cannot consent. It's an uncomfortable truth of medical history. I told myself I was different because I genuinely cared for you. I wanted both outcomes, medical advances and your well-being. You can't have it both ways, I said. You can't claim to love me as a daughter while using me as a test subject. No, he agreed quietly. I see that now. The lines blurred over the years. Diana and I, we did come to love you as our own. That wasn't fabricated. I thought of the video on my phone, of my mother's first concern being the family's reputation rather than my life. Love doesn't do what you did. No, he repeated. It doesn't. I gestured to the journal. What will I find in here? The complete record of my observations and the treatments I administered. The papers I published based on your case, though I disguised your identity, of course. My rationalizations and, occasionally, my doubts. He met my gaze directly. It won't excuse what I did, but it might help you understand. And my real mother. What do you know about her? His expression softened slightly. Catherine was very young, barely more than a child herself. She had been on the streets for approximately 2 years according to her sporadic medical history. She was intelligent, she mentioned having been in advanced classes before dropping out. During the brief time she was conscious after your birth, she asked if you were a girl or boy. When I told her she had a daughter, she smiled and said, "Her name is Emma." It was the last thing she said. Something twisted in my chest, grief for the young woman I would never know, gratitude that at least this one thing, my name, had truly come from her. And my biological father. She didn't say. The intake form listed unknown. Given her circumstances. He didn't need to elaborate on the possibilities. I took a deep breath. I want a copy of everything you have on Catherine Winters. And I want your help locating any family she might have had. They deserve to know what happened to her daughter. He nodded slowly. I'll do whatever I can. Though after nearly 30 years. Start with this, I said, taking the journal from the desk. I'm going to read every word, and then we'll discuss the financial settlement. My silence for my future security. As I stood to leave, my father spoke again, his voice uncharacteristically hesitant. Emma, regardless of how this began, you have been my daughter in every way that matters to me. I hope someday you might find it possible, if not to forgive, then to understand. I paused at the door, the weight of the journal heavy in my hands. Understanding isn't the problem, Dad. I understand perfectly what you did and why. That's exactly why forgiveness seems impossible right now. 6 months passed. Spring arrived in Boston, bringing with it cherry blossoms in the public garden, and a sense of renewal that matched my own tentative healing. I had moved to a new apartment in Somerville, putting physical distance between myself and the family that had both raised and betrayed me. The financial settlement my parents provided, substantial enough to secure my future, funded not only my living expenses, but also the therapy I desperately needed. Dr. Chen had adjusted my medication regimen to the minimal intervention my actual condition required. For the first time in my life, I felt physically strong, capable of activities I'd always been told were too risky. I joined a beginner's swimming class, learned to ride a bicycle, and even went hiking in the Blue Hills, simple pleasures most people took for granted, but which represented profound freedom to me. Michael had stood by me through it all, offering support without pressure, as I worked through the complex emotions of rebuilding my identity. Our relationship had deepened, weathering the storm of my family revelation, and emerging stronger. Most surprisingly, Olivia and I had established a fragile new connection. Her betrayal had been the catalyst for the unraveling of our family's secrets, but in the aftermath, she had shown unexpected remorse and growth. The therapist she'd begun seeing had helped her recognize the narcissistic patterns she'd developed in our dysfunctional family system. We weren't close, but we were cautiously building something that felt more authentic than our previous relationship had ever been. My parents, and despite everything, I couldn't completely stop thinking of them that way, maintained their distance as I had requested. My father had kept his promise, providing all the information he had about Catherine Winters, and using his medical connections to help track down any living relatives she might have had. The search had led to a breakthrough I hadn't dared hope for: Catherine's younger sister, Megan Winters Collins, living in Portland, Oregon with her husband and 3 children. Our first video call had been emotional, filled with tears and incredulous laughter, as we studied each other's faces for familial resemblances. She had been only 14 when Catherine ran away, and the family had never known about her pregnancy. For decades, they had wondered what had happened to her after she disappeared from a halfway house in Massachusetts. "You look so much like her," Megan had said, touching her screen as if she could reach through it to touch my face. "She was brilliant, you know. Could have gone to any college she wanted. But our parents were strict, religious. When they found out she was experimenting with drugs in high school, they sent her to a disciplinary boarding school. She was never the same after that." Learning about Catherine, my mother, had filled in pieces of myself I hadn't known were missing. My love of books, my intellectual curiosity, even my stubbornness, all echoed in Megan's stories about her sister. I had scheduled a trip to Portland the following month to meet my newfound family in person. As for my biological father, that mystery remained unsolved. Given Catherine's circumstances at the time, he might never be identified. I had made peace with that uncertainty, focusing instead on the connections I could build and the identity I was reclaiming. Today marked another significant step in my journey. I had arranged to meet my parents at a neutral location, a quiet cafe near the Charles River. It would be our first face-to-face conversation since I had walked out of their house 6 months earlier with my father's journal and a determination to rebuild my life on my own terms. They were already there when I arrived, sitting stiffly at a corner table. My mother had aged visibly, the perfect coiffure and makeup unable to hide the strain of recent months. My father seemed smaller somehow, his authoritative presence diminished. They both stood awkwardly as I approached. "Emma," my mother said, her voice wavering slightly. "You look wonderful." "Thank you," I replied, taking a seat across from them. "I feel better than I ever have, actually." My father nodded, his clinical gaze automatically assessing me. "Dr. Chen mentioned your improved cardiac function at your last evaluation. The simplified medication protocol seems to be working well." "It is?" I paused as the server brought the tea I had ordered in advance. "I've been swimming twice a week. No adverse effects." "Swimming?" My mother looked startled. "But you never." "I was never allowed," I corrected gently. "There's a difference." An uncomfortable silence fell. My father broke it, clearing his throat. "We received your letter. About meeting your Aunt Megan." "Yes. I'm flying out next month." I stirred my tea, watching their reactions carefully. "She's invited me to stay with her family. They are eager to get to know me." "Of course they are," my mother said, a hint of her old graciousness returning. "You're a remarkable young woman. They are fortunate to have found you." "I think we are fortunate to have found each other," I replied. "Catherine's parents, my grandparents, have passed away, but I'll get to see photos, hear stories. Connect with the heritage that was kept from me." My father winced slightly at that, but nodded. "You deserve those connections." Another silence. This time, I was the one to break it. "I've done a lot of thinking over these months. A lot of therapy, too." I looked at each of them in turn. "What you did was wrong. Deeply, fundamentally wrong. The lies, the unnecessary medical interventions, using me for research. I still struggle to comprehend how you could have done it." They both nodded, accepting the judgment without defense. "But I've also come to understand that few things in life are entirely black and white." I took a deep breath. "You gave me a home when I had none. Education, security, in your own way, love. It doesn't excuse what you did, but it does complicate the narrative." "What are you saying, Emma?" my mother asked hesitantly. "I'm saying that I don't want to carry the weight of anger and resentment forever. It's exhausting, and ultimately, it only hurts me more." I straightened my shoulders. "I'm not ready to forgive you. I may never be fully ready. But I am willing to begin a new relationship, one based on truth and respect for my autonomy." My father's eyes glistened with uncharacteristic tears. "We don't deserve that chance." "This isn't about what you deserve," I said firmly. "It's about what I need to heal and move forward. Clear boundaries, complete honesty, and the freedom to include or exclude you from my life as I see fit." "Anything," my mother whispered. "We'll agree to anything you ask." "Then let's start here," I said, taking a sip of my tea. "Tell me about the day you brought me home. Not the sanitized version you've always told, but the truth. What were you thinking? What were you feeling?" "Start at the beginning." As my father began to speak, his voice low and unsteady, I realized this was the first real conversation we had ever had, not doctor and patient, not researcher and subject, but simply human beings confronting a complicated, painful shared history. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a beginning. And sometimes, beginnings are enough. Well, there you have it, the full story of how my life unraveled and how I've been piecing it back together on my own terms. I'm still processing everything that happened, but sharing this journey with all of you has been incredibly therapeutic. If you've ever had to rebuild your identity, or discovered family secrets that changed everything, I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments below. Has karma or justice played a role in your family dynamics? How did you handle it? This channel is all about sharing these real, raw life experiences that so many of us face, but few talk about openly. If my story resonated with you in any way, please hit that like button. It really helps the algorithm show this to others who might need to hear it. Subscribe if you want to follow my journey as I visit my biological family next month. I'll be documenting the entire experience. And if you know someone struggling with family betrayal or identity issues, sharing this video might help them feel less alone. Thank you for listening, for your support, and for creating this amazing community where we can share our most vulnerable stories. Remember that sometimes the family we choose is more important than the family we are born into, and that healing, while not linear, is always possible. I'll see you in the next video.